guys, Hannah and Mike here with Delta. Today we're going to walk you through how to install a center set pull-down bathroom faucet. We're using the Broadmoor model for this video, but Delta offers a variety of different styles and finishes for this type of faucet.
Yeah, the pull-down spout makes perfect sense. It's such a convenient feature to have in your bathroom. It's great for sink rinsing and keeping everything nice and clean. Now, Broadmoor comes in two styles, a center set and a widespread.
There are a few differences, so we have two different install videos. Check your faucet. If it looks like this one, you're in the right place. If your handles are separate from the spout, you have the widespread version, and there's a video especially for you.
The center set faucet is designed for a 4-inch, 3-hole sink configuration. So if you're not sure about your sink, be sure to measure between the center of the two farthest holes.
There are some basic supplies and tools you'll need for this installation, so be sure you have these on hand before you get started.
Now first, and this is important, we always recommend replacing your supply lines when you replace your faucet. We want to make sure we buy the right size and length when we go to your local home improvement store. So take a quick measurement from your stub outs to the bottom of your faucet to determine what the minimum length you need is. Also, I want to point out that the connection for the faucet side is a 1/2 inch across, and the stub out side could vary, so just double check that measurement before you buy those lines. Also, go ahead and grab an adjustable wrench, a Phillips screwdriver, and some safety glasses.
You may also need a flashlight in case it's dark underneath your sink, a towel for some light cleanup, a bucket when flushing your lines, and a tube of silicone.
I think that's everything. We're ready to get started.
So to get started, we're going to drop our faucet into our sink. The first step in doing so is taking this plastic gasket. You'll notice it has this groove on the top. You want to make sure that faces up. And there's also the word front on here. Make sure that that faces the front of the faucet and place so that you can read it. I find it's easier to place this right onto your sink deck and then feed the faucet down onto it. This is also a good time to mention if you're working with an uneven sink surface, you may want to use a bead of silicone, put it underneath the gasket to ensure a watertight seal. So now we're going to feed our faucet spray hose through the center hole, making sure nothing gets kinked, and making sure I don't hit this quick connect tab. I don't want that to get damaged or else I won't be able to connect my quick connect hose to it later. So that should sit on there nice and easy, and there will be a small edge here that sticks out. That's what you want to see. Okay, so I'm going to make sure this is nice and centered, and Mike's going to tighten this up while I hold it. Now if you're alone, a quick tip is to just hand tighten it underneath the sink, come back up, make sure everything is still centered, and then go back down and do your final tighten. All right, I think we're ready to go ahead and tighten it down.
Now that we have our faucet dropped in and we're under the cabinet, our next step is going to be to use our 2 plastic mounting nuts, and we're going to be threading these up onto the mounting shanks that are the brass color. There's 2 of them and they should go on pretty easy, so I don't want to force these. I'm going to start with using the flat side facing the bottom of the sink and bring it up to the shank, and then just slowly thread that right on. I'm just going to get it snug for now. I'm going to grab the other one, do the same thing on the other side. All right, great. I got both those snug, and now I'm going to have Hannah make sure it's nice and lined up. Once we get it lined up and centered, I'm going to give them one final tighten on each side. Now, our next step is going to be to connect our spray hose to our spout tube, and you'll notice it has this quick connect system where it has these little plastic clips that are going to clip right into place. And so I'm going to push this up onto the tube until I hear a clip, and as I push this up, I want to make sure that my tube is free and clear of anything catching on it as it moves up and down. So go ahead and push up into place until I hear a click, and then I give it a slight tug down to assure a good connection. Next, we're going to attach our weight to our spray hose. Now, the position of this weight is important for proper function of the faucet. We want to make sure we're getting it on the sprayer side of the hose, just above the bottom of this loop here. So I'm going to find the bottom of my loop, slide the weight over my hose, and I want to make sure I'm getting the hose directly in the center of the weight so it's not pinched by either side. Then I take my screw. I'll use my Phillips head screwdriver to tighten up both screws. All right. Again, I'm checking to make sure nothing's pinched and everything's nice and free and clear so it can operate correctly. And I think we're ready to move on. Next, I've got my supply lines. I'm going to connect them to my stub outs. I'm going to start with the cold side. Start by just hand threading it on there. It should go nice and easy, so I don't need to force it. And then I'm going to use my adjustable wrench to tighten it up the last couple turns. It just needs to be snug. I don't need to over tighten this. All right, that feels pretty good. I'm gonna repeat the same steps for the hot side. All right, I've got my bucket, I've got my towel, and now we're going to flush our supply lines. Now, I always like to flush my supply lines whenever I'm installing a new faucet to make sure there's no debris in there that could cause a flow issue a little bit later. So to do this, I'm going to hold my supply line in the bucket. I always make sure to hold it with my hand so it doesn't fly out. And I'm going to slowly turn on my stub out to have water flow into the bucket for about 30 seconds, get all the debris out of those lines. That should be good. Use my towel for a little bit of cleanup. And now I'm going to complete the same steps for the hot side. Now one of our final steps is going to be to connect our supply lines to the bottom of our shanks. I'm going to start with my cold side, bring it up to the bottom of the shank, hand tighten it. Again, it should thread on pretty easy. You don't want to force that. Bring it up till it's snug, and then I'll use my adjustable wrench to give it the last couple of turns necessary to get nice and tight. All right, that looks good. I'm going to complete the same steps for the hot side. Now I'm going to turn on both my supplies. All right, with those on, now I have water running through my supply lines up to my faucet, so now's a great time to check for any leaks. I'm going to check my bottom connection as well as my top connection, looking for any drips or telltale signs of leaking, and everything looks nice and tight, so I think we're ready to move on.
Now it's time to flush our faucet. We're going to use our included aerator wrench, and it has teeth on it, fits one way. We're going to turn it counterclockwise just a couple of times to remove our aerator. That'll fall out. Make sure we don't lose that. We'll put that to the side. Now, this can get messy. It can be a lot of water, so I always like to use a washcloth. Just cover the spray wand. We'll turn this on to full mix position, both hot and cold. Let that run for about 30 seconds. Okay? Now we're going to put our aerator back in using the same steps. Take our aerator wrench, turn it clockwise this time. Perfect. Now this is a good time to check for leaks. I'm going to check around the base of the faucet or on the handles. This looks good. Now I'm also going to check the functionality. Make sure that my hose extends easily, the weight's not getting caught on anything, and then it snaps back into place. Nice, that is going to be super handy. Okay, now it's time to install our drain assembly.
Before we install your new push-pop drain, we want to remove the old drain that's already in place, and we have a video that shows you how to do that, so I'm not going to show you how to do that here, but be sure to check that out if you have any questions.
So now it's time to install our drain assembly. There are two common types of drains. There's a pop-up drain, which has a lift rod in the back of your faucet that you move up and down to open and close your drain. And then there's the push-pop drain, which I have here, and that's included with your faucet. They're super awesome and super easy to use. You just push it down to open it, push it down again to close it. You can actually pull the stopper out to clean it. It's really nice. If your old faucet's drain has a lift rod, your drain isn't going to open and close anymore. So you will need to install one of these. So with all of that said, let's move on to the actual install. So your drain will come just like this in the box, all assembled. And the first thing we're gonna do is actually disassemble it. So we're gonna screw off the nut, set that to the side, take off your conical gasket here, set that to the side. And then there's a thin gasket here that we're actually going to discard because we're going to use silicone instead. That just ensures a more watertight seal. We're going to place the silicone right here. Now before I do that, I am going to remove the stopper completely just so I don't get any silicone on it. So we're just going to place a bead of silicone. Okay, that looks good. Set that to the side. Now we're just going to place this in. All right, now Mike's gonna tighten it up. While he does this, excess is definitely gonna come out the side, so I'm gonna wipe it up before it dries. Then we'll just let it cure for 24 hours or for however long the manufacturer recommends.
With our drain in place, now I'm going to use my gasket to help ensure a nice tight seal. And you'll notice it has a bevel to the top, and I want the bevel facing up, flat edge down. I'm going to feed my gasket up over the bottom of my drain, and I find it's easy to use my free hand to hold it down in place as I force this up over the edge of that drain. And now I'm going to use my drain nut, again feeding it up over my drain, and then threading it on. Should spin nice and easy until it hits that gasket. And here's where I do want to make sure I have a nice tight seal, so I'm going to put a little bit more muscle into it as I, again, hold the drain with my free hand to make sure we're not going to have any leaks from the bottom of that sink. All right, that looks good and tight. It's all in place. I'm going to continue hooking up the rest of my plumbing. We'll be ready to move on after that.
Okay, looks like we're good here. That was super easy and I can't wait to start using it.
For more Delta projects, tips, and suggestions, look for our other videos. And if you have any issues, be sure to call Delta's customer service. They have a whole team on hand to answer any questions you might have.
You're gonna love this faucet. Enjoy.